Hey, how's it going, everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be doing my Week 9 power rankings after Week 8 of the 2023 NFL season. Now, I wasn't able to do these power rankings for the last couple of weeks. As you can see, the last full-length video of these power rankings was Week 5. And now we're at Week 9. Obviously, I had a little hiatus for 2 weeks, but I'm back now. But a lot of things have changed. Disclaimer, I made it short for the week 6 power rankings, or going into week 7, of course. But obviously we're back in the long form video. It's just a little bit easier for me to edit and record, as shorts kind of take a long time if you want to edit them properly. But we're going to be going right into this, starting off with the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, there are a ton of big movers because I haven't done this in 2 weeks, but hopefully it's pretty much up to date. I'm uploading this after my mock draft video. Make sure you guys go watch that. It's already on my channel if you guys like the NFL draft. But starting off with the Arizona Cardinals, I have them going all the way back down to 32, which is pretty much where they started off in the beginning of the season. Now 1-7. Just traded Joshua Dobbs to the Vikings. And overall, obviously they had the most losses, but they're right in line with the Carolina Panthers as one of the worst teams in the league. But I don't truly think that they're genuinely the worst. I know that I have them 32 in my rankings, but their offense is still productive. It's even more productive than teams like the Giants, even the Jets, even the Bears. But their problem is the defense. But their defense isn't even worse than teams like the Broncos defense or the Bears defense or the Raiders defense. But obviously, with 7 losses and only 1 win, they're going to be sat at 32. Carolina Panthers, big win against the Houston Texans. Very late win. They won 15-13. Bryce Young got his first win, had a good, solid game. But overall, I know that the very close win against a solid team in the Houston Texans is going to move them up by 1, getting their first win, but obviously they're not going to get moved up a ton. Chicago Bears, I'm not moving from 30. They are in contention for the 3rd overall pick right now, and that's essentially where they are in the power rankings. Tyler Badgett had a good game against the Las Vegas Raiders, but the Raiders are a bad team, and they had who they have even starting. I even forgot who they started for that game with Jimmy Garoppolo out. The New York Giants, again, I've been saying this all year. The offense has not been doing good at all. I know that they probably should have won against the Jets. I'm very glad that the Jets won that game, but that's what happens when you only complete 1 pass in the second half. They had -9 passing yards the entire game. However, they were in the driver's seat for the majority of the second half until Zach Wilson was able to get the Jets in the field goal range, and then in overtime, the Giants lost. But that offense was truly horrendous. It was purely uncompetitive out of them as well. I'll get to the Jets in a second, but very uncompetitive from the Giants on offense with their idea. It's run play after run play after run play after run play. Saquon Barkley got 36 runs. It's just not a sustainable way to win an NFL game. And it turns out they didn't win that game either. New England Patriots, I moved them up quite a bit from where I had them due to their win against the Buffalo Bills. That's a very close win, a walk-off win for them as well. But they jumped back and had a bad game against the Dolphins. They're also, the only other 2-6 teams, so it's fitting that they are still in the bottom 5. The Las Vegas Raiders, I don't know what's going to happen with Josh McDaniels. I think he gets fired before the bye. The offense and he has totally lost the locker room. Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs have been very vocal about that. And overall, the Raiders are not in the best spot as of right now. I know they've come away with a few wins. Earlier in the season, they were 3-3. But the defense is not looking very good, and it hasn't been for the whole year. Green Bay Packers, they've slipped big time as of recently. They were at 1 point 2-3, but I think they lost. No, I think they've lost their last 3 or 2, if I'm not incorrect. Jordan Love has had a much shakier last couple of games. Obviously, 11 interceptions to now 8. Or 11 touchdowns to 8 interceptions now. Accuracy is under 60%. and the offense just hasn't been looking great as of recently. I'm moving them down 6 from their last ranking at 20. Denver Broncos get moved up by 3 with a big win against the Kansas City Chiefs. Russell Wilson had a very good game, and the defense played well, forcing 3 turnovers against Patrick Mahomes. With Patrick Mahomes obviously having the flu, he should probably be back for I think the Chiefs are on Sunday Night Football next week, if I'm not correct. Oh, no, they're in Germany. They're in Germany for a 9 o'clock game. I don't know. Maybe we'll have another tough game there. The Indianapolis Colts are moving down a ton. Obviously, they were 3-2 at one point. They've lost the last 3, so now they're moving down to 3-9 without Anthony Richardson. The offense is still looking good with Shane Steichen, but the defense has just been slipping as of recently, and they've been losing close games, like against the Browns. They really shouldn't have lost that Browns game. The flag at the end zone, that ball's not catchable. You can't throw that flag. One of the worst ref games I've seen in a really long time with that Colts-Browns game. But outside of that, I'm moving them down by 7. Tennessee Titans were 2-4 to begin last week, and I thought it was over, man. But now with and then Malik Willis started. He fumbled the snap to start. Didn't look great for him. But then when they put in Will Levis, he had 4 touchdowns in that game. DeAndre Hopkins had 3 touchdowns, and they were able to beat the Falcons in a pretty handled game. So I'm moving them up by 3, but I still think that right now they're the second worst team in the AFC. Or no, not the second worst. Yeah, I would say the second worst right now in the AFC South as it stands. The Buccaneers have dropped 3 out of their last 4. No, they've dropped 3 out of their last 3 and are moving down 4 in my rankings. However, everything's playing well. They've just gotten tougher opponents. So I'm not going to kill them too much, moving them down by 4 though. But Washington Commanders 3-5. Again, they face tough opponents. But Sam Howell is super up and down. Against the Giants, he didn't play great, but against the Eagles, he's playing really well. He had 4 touchdowns. So I'm not going to move them too far down either. They're just a very up and a very down team. And that's kind of indicative of me not moving them as of right now. But the Rams are the biggest losers of my week rankings as of right now. I'm going down -8. Again, they're facing tougher opponents like the Eagles, but they lost the game against the Steelers. They lost against the Cowboys. And overall, the offense took a big dip against the Cowboys, obviously, but the defense is the main thing. And then obviously late in game, giving up some leads, and the red zone offense is not as good as it clearly used to be. And the offensive line is giving up a ton of pressure. But Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are doing obviously super well. But I am moving them down by 8 as they are now 3-9. The Atlanta Falcons I'm keeping at 19, haven't moved them. Even though they are 4-4, the offense has just been. I mean, you have so much talented players like Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, and the utilization of them has just not been there. And I think that's on the coaching, and I think that's on Desmond Ridder as well. I mean, you'd hope to get your good players involved. Your first round picks, they're all top 10 picks, and they're all underutilized. And is that because of scheme? Is that because Desmond Ridder isn't able to hit them? I think it's a mix of both, and I think that they're both equally responsible for why the Atlanta Falcons have been slipping as of recently, and why the Saints have pretty much jumped them as the more productive, as the better defensive team and the better offensive team in the NFC South. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're the worst. I don't think that it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. They're the worst team with the best record, because they're over 500, 4-3, but their offense is bottom 5, I think, in bottom 10 in DVOA. The offense has not been doing great, and as we saw against the Jaguars, against a much better offense, the defense. And obviously with Minkah Fitzpatrick going out, that's a huge loss for them. That's going to be a huge loss for them. But I'm still moving them up by 6. They've had some really good wins against like the Rams, against the Browns. They're still a winning team, so I'm going to obviously have them within the top 18, moving them up by 6. But I still have a ton of question marks now with Kenny Pickett out. And Mitch Trubisky, last year he did very bad at the starting quarterback. it's going to be a tough road for them as well, as their schedule is getting a little bit harder, starting with the Jaguars. They have to face the Bengals, and they have to face the Ravens and the Browns again. And those are all top 12 teams to me. But I still have them right now currently high because their defense is just so good. I mean, their defense, I think, leads the league in defensive points scored. Minnesota Vikings, I'm also moving up by 7. They went from 1-4 to 4-4. However, I can't move them any more up than this. I would move them into the top 16, but Kirk Cousins just tore his Achilles. Joshua Dobbs is coming to the Vikings. I think that's very interesting. Joshua Dobbs has been playing well with a pretty subpar supporting cast on the offense with the Arizona Cardinals. So we'll have to see whether Joshua Dobbs can actually push them into the playoffs. He's much better than any other quarterback on that Minnesota Vikings roster. I'm glad that the Vikings were that they went and got a quarterback. Jordan Addison is playing genuinely phenomenal. The defense has been stepping up a lot, and they've had some really good wins, like against the 49ers. And all that said, they could probably make the wild card if they continue to play like this. And it gets even better with Justin Jefferson coming back, hopefully soon. I think it's like a week 11 return projected. Moving on to the Houston Texans, moving them down by 2. They're the second best team with a losing record to me. The Houston Texans have a great offense with CJ Stroud. Obviously wasn't shown with a Carolina game. But they have proven they can have a really good offense, and they've proven they can have a solid defense at times. I would be a little skeptical as of the bottom half of the season when teams kind of figure out how to shut down CJ Stroud a little bit more. But I mean, Stroud has been very productive. The offense has been overall productive outside of the Panthers game. So I still have them top 16, but I think with another loss, they probably go to the 20s. I've had them bouncing around from the 14 to 20 range pretty much for the last couple of weeks. So that's where I think they're going to stay for the majority of the season. From the New Orleans Saints have been boosted up a ton, +7. I think they've jumped the Falcons easily as the main contender in the NFC South. They have been playing very good offense as of recently, with Derek Carr finally being healthy after injury. Rashid Shaheed is having a great year. Chris Olave is not. Chris Olave really not having a great year. But the defense is the main contributor of that team, the top 10 in defensive DVOA. And they're 4-4 with a decent record. And their schedule is only their schedule is only easier from this point on. So they look like the main contenders right now in the NFC South. The Los Angeles Chargers are my best team with a losing record. And I think this is a little potentially high for them, but I do think that they're still a very solid team with their offense. Obviously, with Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen having a good game. Quentin Johnson had his breakout game with 50 yards. I guess breakout. It is finally his first good game all year. And the defense played very well against the Bears, but it's the Bears. But I am keeping them at 14. Right above them, I have the New York Jets. By the way, the Chargers and the Jets play on Monday Night Football next week, so that's a pretty crucial matchup for the teams right next, or for the teams that are right next to each other. For the Jets, their offense, it's a very tough environment as well. I forgot to mention for the Giants that it was cold, wet, rainy, and windy. Cold, wet, rainy, windy. Pretty much if only it was snowing, it would have been a worse condition than that game. But obviously the New York Jets ended up coming back late in that game. Their defense allowed -9 passing yards, and again, they beat the Eagles, which I didn't count in my last power rankings video, that I had for my week 7. I ended up not making that video. But obviously that is the main reason why they're moving up 3 is because of that win versus the Eagles. And then the bye week, a lot of teams in the AFC lost. But I have them moving up by 3. The Cleveland Browns are moving down by 2. They lose against the Seahawks, who the Bengals beat, and the Browns lost to the Steelers too. When did the Browns lost to the Steelers a while ago? Never mind about that. But the Browns barely beat the Colts. And I mean like barely, because the refs bailed them out big time. And when I see a game that's balled out by ref ball, I don't attribute that win a lot more because it very easily could have gone the other way. And then you lose to Seattle, who the Bengals beat in a much more in a much better showing than the Browns did. Obviously, with Deshaun Watson going out, PJ Walker steps in as the quarterback. And I mean, quarterback room for the Browns is kind of in turmoil because you have no good options right now, I guess. But moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, they obviously beat the Browns, so they're going up by one. They're 5-2 right now. Right now, second in the NFC West, which is fitting where they're at. I have them slightly outside of the top 10 because I have the team that beat them above them, which is the Cincinnati Bengals, going back up to the top 10. They've looked great as of recently. They beat the 49ers 31-17. Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow look very solid, So I have them moving up to 10. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills, who I've dropped quite a bit. I had them 6 in my last power ranking. Now I have them at 9. A loss to the New England Patriots and almost a loss to the New York Giants are going to bump you down a little bit, as well as being 5-3. I know they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but 2 almost losses against 2-6 teams, and as well as them struggling for a good bit of the year. Obviously, in the beginning of the year, they lost to the Jags, they lost to the Jets, Patriots now. They beat the Commanders, they beat the Raiders, they beat the Buccaneers, and they beat the Dolphins. The Dolphins is their main shining victory as of right now. Even though I have the Detroit Lions going down by 3, I don't think it's as impactful as more of the Ravens and the Jaguars, I guess, and the Cowboys jumping them instead of them playing bad. I know that they've beaten up on some, bad team, or they beat up on the Raiders yesterday, but huge loss against the Ravens. Their defense kind of got exposed, kind of like last year when we saw them give up a lot of points in the beginning of the year against good offenses. They've obviously only beat negative teams, I guess, with negative records. However, they're still a good team. They're still a very good offense. The red zone offense is a little bit worse without David Montgomery, who is their main power back, but with Jahmyr Gibbs having his good 2 breakout games, they've been very solid. However, with the loss to the Ravens and the Jaguars playing well of recently, I would have them both above the Lions. And moving on to the Ravens, who beat the Lions in a really good matchup, as well as beating the Arizona Cardinals in a free win there. They're 6-2 now. They're the number 1 team in the AFC North. Lamar Jackson's been playing really well of recently, so has Mark Andrews. And the defense is playing really well as well. Jacksonville Jaguars have going up to 6. They're playing really well on defense. My main concern in the offseason was, how is their defense going to perform? Well, they're leading the league in forced turnovers with 17. And they're 6-2. They've beaten up against bad teams. They've faced like the Steelers, the Colts. But I mean, they had some good wins like the Bills, and they did lose to the Chiefs. However, and they did lose to the Texans as well, but they're still a solid team that plays good defense. Dallas Cowboys, another team going back into the top 5, just put up 40 on the Rams, jumped out to a 28-point lead at halftime. Overall, they're having a good year, but some of what have been up and down because they have games where they blow out opponents, like when they face the Jets, when they face the Rams, when they face the Giants. But then against teams like the 49ers, they were not as competitive. And speaking about that, the 49ers are going down by 2. They've had 2 losses as of recently. They've had 3 losses as of recently. They went from 5-0 to 5-3. Purdy is not having as great of a time. He sustained a concussion. Deebo Samuel went out with an injury. They lost against the Browns, and they just lost against the Bengals. But the 49ers defense just added Chase Young, and I don't think that's really fair. For a 3rd-round pick, you're adding the former 2nd overall pick, who is coming back from an ACL injury and is looking good off of the edge. 49ers defense just added a really killer guy. But the offense is taking a big dip. Brock Purdy isn't looking as great, obviously due to the concussion, but also it's because the interior offensive line is breaking down a lot faster, which I think is a lot harder for him to stay in the pocket. But the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm also bringing down by 2. I have not been the biggest fan of the Kansas City Chiefs pretty much all this year. I know they're 6-2, but the refs bailed them out big time on 2 games with the Jets and the Vikings. So they've gotten the handouts with the bailouts. They've obviously faced some pretty bad teams, like they faced the Bears, or they beat down on the Bears. Who else did they play? They faced they faced the Chargers. They beat down on the Chargers too. I don't know if they faced the Raiders yet. I think they have. But big loss against the Broncos. The defense without Nick Bolton is not the same. The middle of the field, the running game is opened up a lot. The secondary didn't have their best game, and their offense mainly. With Patrick Mahomes have 3 turnovers. I know he had the flu, but the offense just not looking great. I mean, is it because they don't have a wide receiver one? I mean, Rashee Rice is stepping up a lot too. But I don't know. Outside of the immediate attention they're getting with Travis Kelce, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are really showing that Eric Bieniemy. I mean, look at the Commanders' offense. The Commanders' offense rolls, and the Chiefs' offense really doesn't. So maybe Eric Bieniemy had a much bigger say in the offense than people recognize, or at least helped a lot more because the Kansas City Chiefs' offense does not look the same. Or it's because Tyreek Hill, or the absence of Tyreek Hill and the absence of a true wide receiver one is really showing out now. For the Miami Dolphins, I have them going up by 2, jumping up to be the best team in the AFC currently, number 1 offense in the NFL. Beat downs on a bunch of bad teams. I know I really shouldn't put them at 2, but I can't ignore how good of an offense they are and how productive of a team they just go up and down the field. They're just one of those teams that does that, and I have them at 2. And I think the Dolphins are playing very well, and they win the games they're supposed to win. Against the Bills, like the Bills are a good-ish team. They lost also against the Eagles. Like the Eagles are the number 1 team in the NFL. You're gonna blame them for facing a phenomenal team. I know the Jets beat them, but it's a different dynamic because the Dolphins don't match up very well against the Eagles. But also with the Dolphins, you add Jalen Ramsey, your defense becomes a whole lot better in that Vic Fangio system. Philadelphia Eagles, I obviously haven't won. Their only loss is the New York Jets, and Jalen Hurts just had a 4-touchdown game. So my biggest mover up is going to be the Vikings. However, I would say my second biggest mover obviously is the Saints, and then my biggest loser is the Rams and the Cardinals, obviously going back down to 32. But that's going to do it for the video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you guys go follow my Twitter. Make sure you guys go watch my mock draft videos, my 2023 NFL draft videos, and let's enjoy another good week of NFL football. Next week's slate's actually very fun. But that's going to do it for the video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.